for change, to unmask the truth, to unmask the rot in our communities. Unmasking the Truth will focus on the effects of corruption on women, prefer solution and demand for accountability. Unmasking the Truth will be on this radio station starting from Monday, 21st March 2022, and we ask you to join us to condemn corruption, to demand for accountability, and to work together for a better Nigeria. Unmasking the Truth is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation.
As at January 25th, 2022, Nigeria ranks as the second most corrupt country in West Africa, according to the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center. Though the Nigerian government says it is fighting and reducing the level of corruption, what does this ranking mean for us as a nation, the second most corrupt country in West Africa? My name is Esther Alaribi, and today on your radio station we'll be unmasking the truth on corruption from the gender lens. Unmasking the Truth is an initiative of St. Ives Communication in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. We went on the streets and Nigerians spoke on what corruption means to them. Let's go to the streets.
Hello, my people. My name is Emmanuel Fada. You see this corruption of a thing we dey talk about na serious matter. To me, corruption make person no dey straightforward. Make it dey try cut corners, they do mago. Work we suppose do no collect money. You go collect money, that's all na corruption. Or make person dey immoral, na corruption too. That's my own idea on corruption. Thank you.
Okay, to me, corruption means a dishonest behavior by people, not necessarily those in power. It can be by anybody can be corrupt. And they do this because of the benefits they derive from it. For instance, you accept money from someone because you want to do something illegal. That is corruption. So corruption is doing something bad, something dishonest, something illegal with the wrong motive,
My name is Enoch, and to me, the meaning of corruption is trying to manage through being dishonest or through butting side deals and so on. It's just for your personal gain.
Nigeria and corruption. The abuse of power for private gain is destroying our nation and making more women poor, making more women and girls suffer, and we must work together to reduce or combat corruption. Unmasking the Truth today on corruption with me is Jide Ojo, Executive Director, OGA Development Consult. Hello, Jide. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing okay.
Good morning, Jide.
Thanks for today.
We're doing great. How are you doing too?
I'm fine.
All right. So you just heard Nigerians speak on what corruption means to them. What do you have to say about this as a Nigerian that lives in Nigeria?
Well, what's there to say is that beyond the fact that they were spot on, the Vox Pop was very spot on. I like the person who talked about corruption going beyond the issue of monetary transaction or illegal exchange of money. A lot of people misconstrue corruption to mean bribery. You understand? You want to get something and you have to bribe your way through. That's what they term corruption. No, it goes beyond exchange of money. Even where you demand sex or gratifications of any sort for you to do the right thing, then it's an act of corruption. It's the abuse of public office for private gain, according to Transparency International. And there are different types of corruption. The one many Nigerians focus on is issue of grand corruption, which involves political office holders. Everybody is celebrating the fact that William Biano, after inauguration of Soludo last Thursday, was apprehended by EFCC for grand corruption. So everybody is putting out and condemning and saying all sorts of things.
Different takes.
But what we fail to do is to look at how we also contribute to corrupt practices. And this is where it affects you and I. The issue of retail corruption. There is a lot of retail corruption or petty corruption that involves ordinary, everyday people in Nigeria. I wrote in my column in The Punch a couple of weeks ago, using the example of a head teacher in a primary school who negotiated with a photographer who is coming to, who was contracted to come and take pictures of the primary 6 students, pupils in that school. So the head teacher negotiated that the photographer will take each child for 150 naira. But when he was telling the classroom teacher, he said the amount is 200 naira.
Corruption.
The classroom teacher told the pupils that it's 250 naira. The pupils got home and told parents that it's 300 naira.
What is cycle?
The wife told the husband that it's 350 naira. So you can see the value chain of corruption. From 150 naira, everybody was adding 50 naira on top for their own personal gain. And they didn't see that as corrupt act. Whereas it is corruption. When you use false measure to measure grains for people in the market, our mothers, our traders in the market where you go buy gari or maize or beans, and they are using false measure. Maybe half of the measure has been padded with candle wax, or even some stuffing in the bowl. And ordinarily in a bowl, in a measure, you are supposed to get 10 tin cups, 10 mixing of grain. You make a measure. But when you take it to what you find is 7.5 or 8.
Even the regular bag of rice we buy too. I learned that there is this instrument they use in poking the bags, and they get some grains out and they sell it to you as a whole bag, and you don't even know.
Exactly. Now we are now connected. That is corruption in every sense of it. So when you do things like that, there is no exchange of money. But because you have cheated, it's corrupt practice. It's a corrupt practice. Anything that has to do with abuse of office for private gain, whether you are exchanging sex for job, sex for mark, sex for admission, or you are even employing people illegally because they are your church members, they are your neighbors or whatever. Or as we see during this fuel scarcity, where you pay some tolls before you are allowed into some fueling stations, before you can be allowed to buy, or somebody has adjusted their meter and is selling for you, supposedly for 165 naira per liter, but the measure has been adjusted to reduce the amount that should be discharged for a liter. I don't know if you are getting
I understand what you mean.
So that is corrupt practice. Do you get it?
Yes.
You are saying a liter is 165. That's what's boldly written on your signpost. But you have adjusted the meter in such a way that what is dispensed is far lower than what should be in a liter of those petroleum products. That is the corrupt act.
All right.
And that's what is called retail corruption. So we need to really understand a DJ that says an artist money before he could play
his
his
song.
music on air or at a party is engaging in corruption. A journalist that will not publish a news because there is no brown envelope for accompanying that news is engaging in corrupt practice. I once went to the market in Ibadan to buy some clothing material, and the brother I don't want to profile wrongly told me it's a 5-yard material. I took it to my tailor, and what he found was 4.5. That is corruption.
Okay.
That is corruption. Because at the end of the day, the yard that was sold to me for 5 was not enough to sew the clothes I wanted to sew the design I wanted to sew. So everyday people are also heavily involved in corrupt practices.
All right. Thank you very much.
And that is why it's extremely difficult to exterminate corruption. Because what we are saying, and that's why, international groups like Transparency International will not judge Nigeria only by the successes of anti-corruption institutions. I don't know if you get my drift.
I understand.
They will not say because EFCC has succeeded in prosecuting 2,200 persons in 1 year, which is unprecedented, then corruption is reducing in Nigeria. And as far as everyday people are involved, heavily involved, that everywhere you turn to. I mean, I also asked a plumber to come and repair something for my water closet. And he went and bought, and he inflated the price for the
item he went to get.
What needed to be replaced. And also he inflated the price and bought a fake item for me.
I see.
That is corrupt act.
Corruption.
So it goes round.
Thank you very much, Judy, for that.
Sector of Nigerian economy where you don't see manifestation of corruption.
All right. Thank you, Jide. Thank you for being on the line with us this morning. Yes, going by the analysis that Jide has given us this morning, you would see that in one way or the other, every one of us has been affected by corruption. Whether you agree or not, corruption, from the market woman in the market to the man in your street, one way or the other, it has affected you directly or not. And that's why today we are unmasking the truth on corruption. And I want to take us back to the streets where Nigerians spoke on what corruption means to them.
My name is Toluwanimi, and I believe corruption happens whenever anybody is given an undue advantage over other people, be it nepotism or bribery or godfatherism or other types.
Hi, my name is Nebetiku Emeka Vincent. My own meaning of corruption is an act of impairing integrity or moral principles. It's a negative trait that begins from the state of one's mind. One not willing to possess integrity or strong moral principles into doing what is right or just. Corruption can actually lead to so many things like dishonesty and can be contacted from an environment or people that does wrong things. Thank you.
I am Tina Marvelous, and corruption to me is an abuse of entrusted power. When selfish reasons is the basis of a government, we can say that government is corrupt. Corruption is not just in the area of government. Corruption can also be seen in our day-to-day activities when a student has to pay a lecturer to get a pass mark, that is corruption. When an individual has to pay to get a particular job, that is corruption. Corruption has so much eaten into various sectors of our country's growth. We can see corruption activities in the light of embezzlement, bribery, and insecurity.
Nigeria and corruption. So, Jide, you heard some of the things that these other people had to say. Now, we hear this particular one people call sex for grades. Oh, we just lost the line with Jide. We'll try to reconnect with Jide in a bit. Sex for grades is one thing that female students go through in tertiary institutions. And for some reason, people are beginning to speak up about these things because now we know more about it. But do female students still suffer this in universities? Oh yes, they do. They still do, because some lecturers will make life so difficult for these female students that you just know it, that at some point, if anybody gets to hear about it, and other lecturers who are not even involved might just blacklist you simply because you spoke out. And these are the things that we need to begin to speak against as a nation. Jide made a lot of analysis in his words, where he said that yes, corruption affects us in every way. Hello, Jide. Good to have you back. Yes. So I was talking about sex for grades, where female students suffer in the hands of lecturers, where they have to give something so they can get good grades. Sometimes it's not even always the case. This student might be a very, very bright student, but because of the selfish interest of some lecturers, they have to make them do very, very unpleasant things, simply because they want to give them a pass mark, or so they can be moved to the next level. How do we begin to protect our girls from this abuse of power, simply because I am in a place where I control what happens to the other person?
Well, this is a phenomenon that has two dimensions, and I think we should put this issue in proper perspective.
All right.
There are those who coerce, there are lecturers who coerce their female students to have sex with them in order to pass them in their exams. There are also female students who offer themselves as a sacrificial lamb because they themselves have nothing upstairs. They are not ready to read. They just want the easy way out. And you know, today is not today you'll be hearing bottom power or using what you have to get what you want. And it's very commonplace on campuses now. You see those people who call Aristo babes, who will almost always be out of campus, partying, clubbing.
But Jide,
when exam comes, wait.
Okay.
When exam comes, what do? They do not want to fail, so they decide to seduce or plainly offer themselves to those lecturers to sleep with them so that it can pass. But there are also the categories of those who are sexually molested and harassed. And that also has been established. We have a very good case in point in the Obafemi Awolowo University, where I forgot the name of the lady who was a postgraduate student at that time, and was under sexual harassment from a professor. And what she did was to simply get the lecturer on tape, recorded the conversation, and blow whistle on the old man. Eventually, ICPC stepped in, human rights organizations, women's NGO stepped in, and the professor was not only relieved of his job at OAU, but was also sent to, I think, 3 years imprisonment.
Yes.
After being prosecuted by ICPC. So,
right.
I just want our listeners to understand the different manifestations and dimensions. We cannot just be eating all the blames of the male lecturers. There are also female students who willingly will offer themselves to those lecturers because they actually were not ready to learn. They are not ready to study. They want the easy way out. So they will seduce or offer themselves to those lecturers and with the expectation that they will be passed in their examinations. Yeah.
Jide, what I was going to say is that don't you think that it is because of the way our society, like there's been environment that has allowed for such, because according to your analysis, it goes both ways. Yes, I agree, it goes both ways. But don't you think it is because they have seen these things play out over time? That is why a student will be laid back, expecting that, I'm going to approach this lecturer and he's going to give in. Because maybe for some way they've heard that it happens. And one would not expect that any lecturer will say no to that. Do you think so, Jide?
Well, for me, there is a level of moral decadence in Nigeria. Truth be told.
Okay.
And like I said in my column when I wrote on this issue, there are manifestations of moral decadence in our society. I happen to have failed several times before I could make it to the university in the early 90s. And I just wonder whether even my children today will have that kind of resilience to fail several times over before they could succeed. Because most people are now looking for easy way out. I mean, I learned of a situation where parents, as a father and mother, sitting for WAEC exam for their children who could not pass WAEC. It happened in Edo State. A retiree, a father who was a retired civil servant, sat for WAEC exam for his son, who could not pass. And the mother likewise for the daughter. And they were both apprehended some years ago. You need to read Dr. Abati's analysis of a jam retreat where it happens some years ago that some mothers were ready to sleep with lecturers. I mean, some mothers were ready to sleep with invigilators to allow their children to cheat in jam exams. So it has gone so bad that people, I mean, we are now trading virtually everything. Trading sex for math, for admission, for exams and malpractice. We are talking all manner of things because of our level of moral decadence. Things that were unheard of in the 70s, in the 80s, down to early 90s are now commonplace. They are not the new normal. You don't understand. You now hear people saying they are sorting their lecturers. People are gathering money. I think this contemporary time, and I'm telling you from a position of fact. I happen to have attended in Abuja here. I attended the education summit where we have the people who matters in the education sector telling us some of these stories of what's happening in the academia now. I think students will deliberately gather money
to give
to their lecturers so that they will not fail the exam.
All right, Gidi. Sorting. Thank you very much for that, Gidi.
There are those who will hire mercenaries. We call them mercenaries.
Yeah, to write the exams.
Hire private people to come and write exams for them.
All right.
Some have been apprehended in the past and prosecuted. So it is the level of tolerance of society that, there's a local balance that a little more way.
True.
A little more way or no more way.
All right, Gidi, let's go back to the streets.
Then you are smart, you are intelligent. Whereas the warped way of analyzing situation that if you are crooked, you can get away with anything in Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much for that, Gidi.
Develop the country.
How sad. Let's go back to the streets and hear what other Nigerians said that corruption means to them.
Mo sí ìwà jẹgúdújẹrá ní ìwà ìbàjẹ́, ìwà tí kò dá, ìwà tí kò tọ́ tí àwọn adarí ìlú, pàápàá jùlọ àwọn olóṣèlú tàbí àwọn tó di ipò adarí kan tàbí òmíì mú. Ìwà tó máa ń wù bóyá nǹkan tó tọ́ sí ará ìlú àwọn nìkan wọn á kó sápò wọn ní pé ẹ̀tọ́ àwọn ni kò yẹ kó tọ́ ará ìlú lọ́wọ́. Ara nǹkan tá à ń pè ní ìwà jẹgúdújẹrá lélẹ́yìn. Ìgbà míì ìjọba lè ti yan owó sílẹ̀ pé owó yìí o, a fẹ́ fi ṣe ètò ẹ̀kọ́, a fẹ́ fi ṣe ètò ìlera, a bá fẹ́ fi ṣe ojú ọ̀nà ní agbègbè yìí ni. Nǹkan tó yẹ kó wà fún gbogbo àwọn èèyàn lọ́pọ̀ yanturu àwọn olóṣèlú yìí àbí àwọn tó ń dipò kan mọ́ àbí omi àwọn ní pé rárá o nǹkan tó báyìí àwọn ṣe fẹ́ ṣe báyìí àwọn ṣe fẹ́ náà wọ́n á máa fi ìyà jẹ mẹ̀kúnnù nǹkan tó tọ́ sí ará ìlú wọn á kó tira nìkan ìwà yóò sì dà kò bójú mu torí ó ní ipa tó ń kó ipa tí ò dà òun ló ń kó wọ́n ṣàkóbá fáwọn èèyàn ibi tó yẹ kó ti fi owó ṣe ètò ẹ̀kọ́ tó ti kówó jẹ tó ti fi ìwà àìtọ́ yìí láti fi kówó jẹ àwọn ọmọ tó yẹ kó lọ sílé ẹ̀kọ́ wọn nílé lọ sílé ẹ̀kọ́ àwọn obìnrin tó yẹ kó lọ sílé ètò ìlera wọn nílé lọ sí ilé ètò ìlera torí pé owó tó yẹ kó fi ṣe irú nǹkan bẹ́ẹ̀ kò sí ní.
Jide, you heard what that lady just said. Now, looking at all of this, we've talked about corruption. How do we begin to tackle corruption that is deeply rooted? Because we're talking about from the grassroots, from the traditional rulers to religious leaders to village headmasters. I mean, it cuts across market setting everywhere. Jide, how do we begin to sort this?
First, before we address the solution, let's look a bit at impact. Because that lady was also addressing the issue of the impact of corruption on our society. Did you know that our underdevelopment is largely as a result of corruption? So many infrastructural deficits that we are witnessing all around the country. The fact that today we do not have electricity, we do not have fuel, we do not have those things that are taken for granted in other climes, in similar climes, is as a result of corruption. And nobody should be in doubt that the impact of corruption is very devastating. Even our level of insecurity is as a result of corruption. Let me put it this way. Did you know that in 2015, when Muhammadu Buhari assumed the presidency of Nigeria, he set up a committee to investigate the former National Security Advisor over issue of $2.1 billion security fund that was meant to fight insurgency in the Northeast.
All right, Jide, we need to wrap up right now. Please just help us wrap your final thoughts in this, please. We're running out of time.
So when you look at what has come out of that security NSA, Sam Dasuki, and the late Chief of Defense Staff, as well as several others who have been put on trial, you find that the impact of corruption is very devastating. But on way out, we just need more whistleblower. We need the whistleblower law, not whistleblower policy. Policy alone will not address the problem. We need a process of crime law to be passed by the National Assembly. There are 3 critical laws before the National Assembly that needs to be passed. We need more funding for anti-corruption agencies. We need eternal vigilance on the part of citizenry. We need a lot of education, as you are doing, as your station is doing on this program. Several others must connect. We need to build critical mass of Nigerians.
Thank you very much, Jide.
And the average citizen on how they are themselves contributing to this issue of corruption.
Thank you so much, Jide.
Corrupt practices.
Thank you so much for taking time to join us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Do have a great day. And yes, that was Jide Ojo, Executive Director of OJA Development Consult. Thank you, Jide, for taking time to join us as we unmask the truth on corruption. Corruption is our biggest threat that should not just be fought by the government, but by everyone, so that we can build a better Nigeria that will benefit all of us. I would like you to share with us your comments, your contributions on corruption at Voice of Women Nigeria on Instagram, Facebook, or you can send us a text or WhatsApp message on 070-317-56537. Unmasking the Truth on Corruption from the Gender Lens is an initiative of St. Ives Communication in partnership with the Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Thank you to the producer, Taiwo Adileye, production assistant, Dabira Oluwagbile, and executive director, Tom Okewale Shonaya. I am Esther Alaribe. Good morning.
WFM 91.7.